As tempting as it is to get on the boat right now, we may as well check to see if there's anything else we can do on this landmass. At the very least, it's a good excuse to gain some more experience and money before we head to the next major town, even if we don't actually find anything. Well, okay. Find isn't the right word to use. I've got a guide open right now to show a map that apparently there's a cave somewhere north, and we may as well see what there is to grab in it. Bloody hell, the random encounters are certainly coming at us at a very high rate at the moment. Should I be fast-forwarding right now or something? Because while we aren't in a particular hurry, this is still kind of annoying. I swear, it's happening every few steps for us. Well, at least that bear went down faster than the previous pair of worms. That one level up certainly did Tyson a favor, that's for sure. Right. Still hasn't outgrown the nunchucks just yet. And it already feels like a pain in the ass to check every time he levels up. Maybe I shouldn't have bothered with the nunchucks in the first place to simplify things a bit more for myself. Just needed 2 more damage to finish that one off. Always a bit chuckle-worthy when you're that close to getting the job done, but just don't know it due to how the game conveys information to us. It's not like we know precisely how durable the enemy is. We can only guess based on how much damage they take when we took them down before. And since it's not like I've got a notepad open every time there's a fight, it can be very tough to keep track of just how much damage you dealt and how much more the enemy should be able to take. That's kind of more of a worry when you're going through a boss fight rather than dealing with random monsters in the field, but it still feels worth saying. Not that you'd know how much health a boss should have, unless you're looking at a guide or use a special item or magical spell to learn what their starting HP is. Well, there's our cave. It's not going to be an outright dungeon, but I'm sure there's going to be some stuff in there for us. We just need to deal with these 2 ogres before we get to check it out. Definitely appreciate that we can take one down physically in a single turn. I should probably consider using our Black Mage's spells a bit more to speed things up some more. It's one thing to save our White Mage's magic points so we can keep on healing later on. It's another thing to save our Black Mage's MP when we aren't even planning on fighting a boss anytime soon anyway. Sometimes it just feels like I'm being too conservative when it comes to our resources, especially very recoverable resources. Huh. When I see brooms pulling something that looks straight out of Fantasia, I don't imagine someone managing to hurt themselves in the corner. And it's probably pretty understandable for someone to be bumping into a lot of things when they're blind, though I've got to say, this guy really should know his own home well enough that he doesn't just bump into absolutely everything, especially when it's so spread out. Anyway, this guy isn't going to be all that helpful to us until we gain his crystal eye, and it's not something that we're going to be able to conveniently find within his own home. We have to go to a completely different location in order to find it. not that big of a deal, but it's still going to be annoying to have to come all the way back here later on after we find it. I'm sorry, why did they decide to have some of the text that the broom told us to be select button dash written backwards? It just seems to be a random thing for them to say. But then, why the hell did I think the broom would have some especially helpful stuff to say to us? Magical or not, it's just here to clean the place along with all the other brooms around here. Not really sure what I was expecting when we walked into his bed, but apparently it has no actual effect at all. We're not going to get a free rest doing that. And apparently those 3 pretty minor healing items are all we're going to gain in this place at this point. At least until we solve the quest for the missing eye and bring it back to the guy. Am I wrong to assume that Montoya is a guy? It's not like the game can do all that much to make the overworld sprites detailed enough to make it easier to tell. All we know is that magic-focused person wears robes, has a hat, and doesn't have any visual apparatus of any kind at the moment. And since Montoya is a Spanish surname, and it means hills and valleys, that doesn't really do anything to tell us the person's gender. It doesn't actually matter that much, just like it doesn't really matter if the player characters you choose at the start of the game are male or female. Though it is tough to imagine a girl for some of the classes, like Monk at the very least. It's just something else for me to say, to help kill time for a bit. We certainly need some time-killing topics, considering the sheer number of random encounters we're gonna run into in the overworld, and in the various dungeons we come across. And since I'm not going out of my way to grind our team, we're going to new territory and happening to beat down a few, enemies as we go from location to location, it doesn't quite feel right just yet for me to start fast-forwarding. I'm sure when we get to the final dungeon, I'll get my finger on the fast-forward button, and any explicit grinding for the sake of grinding, I will do so. But I'm just not all that tempted to do so right here and now. Even if we are running into the same encounters a few times and we're going to head to Pravoka again. Is there ever gonna be a point where those goblins decide to just run away at the mere sight of us? Hell, were they planning on doing that, but we just took them down too fast for them to even get the chance to try? It probably says something that even if Wesker used his magic, he wouldn't be doing as much damage to the ogres we're running into as Boromir. Tyson isn't quite doing the same kind of damage, but it's still a good amount, though. Boromir probably doesn't need some healing, but hey, may as well. He's certainly got plenty of health as his maximum now. Hell, Wesker's the only one that's got less than 100 health. Nunchucks are still pretty useful. I really wish there was a less annoying way to check, though. And somehow, I got turned around and was going back to Cornelia instead of to Pravoka. I suppose one in is as good as another, but still, it probably says more about me than the game that it's this easy for me to get lost around here. Guess I'm just way too used to games that are either pretty handholdy with me, or downright linear to the point that it's a glorified hallway. Let's actually head back to the harbor town. That's where the boat is parked after all, and where we've got some higher quality stores. Can I really call it my boat though if I've yet to actually set foot on it? Sometimes Wesker manages to take one of the wolves down with his knife, and sometimes he doesn't. Feels pretty random when it happens, but it's not that big of an issue either way, since those basic wolves don't hit that hard even on the characters with little to no armor on, though considering how early in the game we are, I'm kind of surprised we've been seeing variants of the wolf. I'm actually more worried though about the worms and the ogres at this point, and I'm sure when we get to the next major location, we'll run into enemies that are even more dangerous than them. Considering we see Boromir hold up his shield for a moment, I don't think that should count as a miss. They should probably have come up with some fresh notification for us blocking an enemy attack. Though I suppose Boromir is the only one on our team who can do something like that, since he's the only one who can equip shields. I can believe that it wasn't worth the trouble in the original release. It just feels like something that should have been dealt with in one of the later releases, though. And once again, we are slaughtering unicorns. Why did they decide to make unicorns one of the early game enemy types anyway? And why not let them use any kind of magic? Last time I checked, one of the main draws of a horned horse like that is that it's magical compared to a regular horse. But all these ones have been kicking. Well, if nothing else, we're gaining a good amount of experience at the moment, even if we aren't making any story progress. Not that there's much of a story to progress through here. Probably a good idea to go to the inn before heading out to sea. It's not like we know just how tough things are going to be the next time we make landfall. And since we gained a good amount of money, we should be able to buy anything and everything that we haven't already grabbed in this town, though I think the only thing we couldn't legitimately afford last time was an extra bit of armor for our already heavily armored fighter. Oh yeah, Boromir is the most well-armored person on the team by far. Everyone else is on the squishy side. In a game that doesn't actually have much in any way of formations, that would let us have one guy ahead and the other three further back to make them less tempting targets. That kind of makes me feel a bit awkward, but then I suppose if this was the kind of game that would have that kind of formation system, then I'd probably have little choice but to keep Tyson in the front row, since he's entirely a melee attacker anyway. I'll certainly try to have some. Unfortunately, I'm just way too used to seeing some especially rough situations, since I've gone through quite a few war-related games. So part of my brain wants to come up with ways that things could have been made a lot more bleak for the world we're here to save in this game. Which is a bit annoying, since one of the reasons I want to go through this and several other Final Fantasy games and the Pokemon franchise is because they don't go that far into the bleak area as some of the other things like Dark Souls and such. I need some goddamn whimsy in my diet here, and I'm fairly certain that Final Fantasies 1 and 3 have more going for them narratively than the first two Pokemon generations on top of that. Those are the two least story-driven Final Fantasies in the franchise, but they still have a lot going for them. Anyway, apparently I decided to start fast-forwarding here because at this point, it's just very blatant grinding on my part. We're not really going anywhere in particular. I'm just trying to get our characters stronger before we do anything else. I did not remember approaching my playthrough of the game this way, But then there are multiple versions of Final Fantasy 1, and while I've never gone through the absolute original release from beginning to end, I have experienced all the others in their totality. And of the numerous different versions, the top two, in my opinion, are the Pixel Remaster, which is available for Steam, and the PSP version, which is a bit of a pain in the ass to find in order to emulate, but not impossible. Since I'm planning on doing the PSP version of Final Fantasy IV, Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core, and probably Tactics as well in the future, I figured I may as well get this version as well onto my system so I can start recording. Again, I just do not like the MP system from the original release of Final Fantasy I, and all but the PSP version go with that odd magic charge system that Suikoden ends up copying later. So I didn't have to debate with myself all that long about which version of Final Fantasy I to record, but since they increased various enemies' health to go along with a magic system that allows for us to use magic more frequently, grinding is actually more necessary. Funnily enough, I can't find it in me to say that makes the PSP version all that much harder as a whole. The only absolutely major trouble spot I remember in any of my playthroughs in the final boss of the game, after a bit of a gauntlet of a dungeon just to get to him. Hell, the gauntlet to get to him doesn't even feel all that memorable in itself to me, because with the way the dungeons are designed in this game, all the bosses except for Garland have a bit of a gauntlet before you get to them, just due to the sheer amount of random encounters you run into in floor after floor. Again, I should probably focus on what we're doing right now, not talk about future events in this same game, when we'll get to actually see them eventually anyway. But again, we're outright grinding right now. I need to talk about something to help burn away part of the clock here, and that was one of the first things that came to mind. It was either that or groan at the fact that I let myself be woefully underprepared for being poisoned. Well, at least we're done with that pair of werewolves for now, at least. I'm a little too used to seeing werewolves be more humanoid in appearance, but as palette swaps go, that seems reasonable enough. I actually kind of appreciate that the werewolves heal slightly between turns on top of being able to poison us. Really helps differentiate them from the other two wolf types we've seen so far, but the thing is, we've seen 3 different variations of wolves in the game, and this is just the 4th clip. Just how many other palette swaps of wolves are we gonna see over the course of the game? Or have they spent absolutely all of them that they had stored already? Again? Kind of feel spoiled by the fact that the Pixel Remaster handles level ups, and that's on top of wishing this version had the same map system as the Pixel Remaster. Ah well, every version of Final Fantasy I comes with its issues, and as baffling as the attempted improvements are in some of them, there's no denying that it's several steps above how things actually were in the original release. Hell, one of the reasons I don't like the original release of the game is because when fighting lower-end enemies, I like to just have everyone target the same hostile, and if the first target happens to go down due to the order of who's hitting it, then let our guys pick and choose their targets for the rest of that turn, and then just keep going from there. But in the original release, if the guy you're targeting gets killed before everyone who targeted him gets a hit in, then everyone left who is focused on that target is gonna hit nothing but air. I can't blame the original designers for not thinking about that possible problem, though. Again, this game was the first of its kind. You can't expect an extremely early attempt at making this style of game, getting everything right on the first go. They got just enough right to inspire a long-running series with numerous spin-offs and an entire genre of games. So they must have done something amazing. Anyway, that should about do it for this clip. Next time, we should start sailing, assuming, of course, that I don't do even more grinding in preparation for things to come.